Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast powered by eBay Motors Group. It is Saturday the 22nd of January and you're joined by myself, Philip Nothard.
And me, Curtis Hutchinson. This is episode 3, season 8 of Motor Trade Radio, bringing you all the chatter that matters. Once again, we've gathered together this week's big car retailing stories across the franchised and independent sectors for you to enjoy all in one place, on demand, on your podcast feed.
So, a few shout-outs this week, haven't we, Curtis? Because we've got an interview coming up, which is very, very well timed, I suspect, from the conversations I've certainly been having throughout the recent weeks. But we've got a special podcast interview coming up, as normal, with Darren Martin, who's the head of valuations at CAP HPI, and he'll be sharing his take on how the used values have been performing throughout January. And as always, we'll try and get his viewers to what to be looking out for and getting a bit of a crystal ball outlook of what he's expecting for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how the year started and those opening couple of weeks in particular. So we'll get the full lowdown from Darren this coming week. And also a big shout out to regular listener Karen Holston on her new job as Divisional Director at G3 Marketing. Now, a lot of you will know Karen. She'll be well known to many of our listeners, having held senior positions at WMS Group, iVendi, RAC and Glasses, and more recently Auto Protect. So thanks for all your kind words, Karen. Thanks for your likes, shares and retweets, and all the best in your new job.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure that we'll be seeing you some physical events throughout 2022 now that we can go out again to physical events.
And if you'd like to get in touch with Phil and I, then, or send us a press release or come on the show, then just email us at motortraderadio@yahoo.com or join our LinkedIn group or follow us on Twitter.
So headlines this week then, Curtis, plus we've got an exclusive, haven't we?
We have, yeah. So the exclusive this week comes from eBay Motors Group, and it's their look at how environmental considerations are actually influencing the next car purchase for older buyers. Also headlines, we've got Britishvolt secures £1.7 billion in funding for a new UK gigaplant. The overwhelming majority of buyers are willing to visit car showrooms. Fast stock turn continues to be driven by customer satisfaction. We've got an update on a story we ran last week about a pay dispute in some Mercedes-Benz retail group outlets, so we've got an update on that. And profits rocket 169% at Stoneacre. That's 169% at Stoneacre. So a good upbeat story on which to end with this week.
Yeah, definitely. So the first story, and this is, let's say it's an exclusive, so we've got this ahead of the media this week, but this is, as Curtis said there, this is from eBay Motors Group, and this is about identifies grandparent effect, as they called it, driving older buyers to consider environmental impact of their next car. And this is looking at buyers over the age of 65, saying they're more interested in talking to dealers about the environmental impact of their next vehicle choice. So yeah, interesting findings here from eBay Motors.
Yeah, and it does challenge a few stereotypes which tend to suggest that younger buyers are more interested about the environmental and sustainability accountability of their next car purchase. So it's an intriguing piece of research. It's part of the Consumer Insight Panel survey of 2,000 in-market new and used car buyers. And as you say, it's identified that over 65s are actually more interested in talking to dealers to understand the environmental impact of their vehicle choice than younger age groups. And the research goes on to look at nearly half, so that's 44% of over 65s consider the fuel economy of their next vehicle to be an important consideration, compared to less than a third, so that's 29% of buyers aged 18 to 24. 2024. But it also goes on to look at the lifespan of the vehicle is considered to be important by 30% of buyers aged over 65 compared to 24% in that younger age group of 18 to 24, while emissions are a key consideration for 35% of over 65s compared to just under a quarter of those aged 18 to 24. And also, in contrast, younger buyers are proportionately more interested in understanding what dealerships are doing to address their carbon footprint. So there's some interesting messaging going on here about what dealers really need to consider when they see customers coming in, and it's about the sustainability and environmental accountability of both the cars they're selling and also the businesses themselves.
No, and you're right. I found that interesting, particularly as you say, that stereotypical type of that over 65s and it's great findings on that. But also, I think a key for retailers and dealers is that messaging. I mean, if you have got, as you've said there, Curtis, that the contrast where the younger buyers and they're saying that that carbon offset is most highly valued by those 25 to 34 year olds, and a quarter of them highlighted that. I mean, that is a definite key messaging, isn't it? If you're going to attract those. Yes. Age bands to your business and overall, that maybe if you're not already sort of displaying your carbon offset messaging, etc., then maybe is that something that we should be doing, to attract those buyers.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's an interesting quote here from Dermot Kelleher, head of marketing and research at eBay Motors Group, who says, "What we're seeing is the emergence of a grandparent effect in car choice, whereby older buyers are giving more consideration to the impact of their next purchase will have on the planet than they've previously been given credit for." And he goes on to say the more widely held belief is that young consumers are driving the green debate. However, our research shows when it comes to their next car of choice, the over 65s are actively engaged and factoring in the legacy they're leaving for their children and grandchildren.
No, it's very interesting, and like you say, as we move forward with this decarbonisation and sustainability, it's obviously then very, very high on the agenda for the automotive sector and that messaging now. So, and by chance, the next story is with Autocar, and this has actually been mentioned a few times this week with Mr. Boris there, that he's I think he's been trying to, I don't know, you might as a journalist there from yourself, Curtis, you might see it as deflecting from other topics, but he has mentioned it, I think, in terms of that support from the UK government, and this is that Britishvolt secures a 1.7 billion in funding for their UK gigaplant. Now, we've always talked about within the industry, what China are doing and what the European market are doing, and we've now got Joe Biden in the US that's heavily behind that sort of infrastructure and gigaplants. But actually, this is a first demonstration that the UK government are actually getting behind it and investing in it now.
Yeah, it's a really positive story, this, and it's the news actually broke on Friday, and it was all over the media, the mainstream media, and the piece from Autocar Business was particularly interesting because they've actually dug quite deeply into this story to see what the ramifications are. So the top line really for the story is that Britishvolt have actually started constructing the factory in Blyth in Northumberland. That started in September last year, but it hopes to build enough cells to supply 300,000 automotive battery packs per year by 2028. So there's some ambitious targets here. So far the company has not said who will buy the cells, but Autocar reports that in a statement it would make a series of announcements over the next few weeks. but it does actually speculate that one of the brands will be Lotus. And I did notice that Lotus were in the press this week, really on the back of their views on the agency model, which they seem to be favouring. So there's an interesting link there. But the site in Northumberland, interestingly, will be actually very close to where Envision will build a battery plant next to the Nissan Sunderland factory. So yeah, we can see where the sort of focus of attention for gigaplants will be. And also the story actually picks up on a third potential gigaplant in Coventry, which was given the go-ahead last week by local council there in the city.
Yeah, and I think the other side of this story, it's great because it's a clear demonstration, the requirement of these batteries within the sector, not just the UK but generally, and obviously with Nissan in terms of export for the UK as well, but actually the employment level that is being stated in both those growth areas. And you've got Britishvolt talking there that their workforce is going to be around the 22,500 to 3,000, and estimate that will grow to 5,000 in terms of associated supply chains, etc. And then the Coventry one is obviously again talking that potentially now they've got the go ahead, that not only in terms of the ambitious proposal for the plant at Coventry Airport reckons it could produce 60 gigawatts per hour of batteries from the one site, actually it will create on approximately 6,000 jobs in that process as well. So great for obviously supporting this acceleration now of EV that we know is now there, but also actually the employment that will bring with it as well in the UK. So great news for both there.
Yeah, definitely. And next story is from AM Online, and the headline there is overwhelming majority of buyers willing to visit car showrooms. Now there's a headline that I think all our listeners will embrace hearing that today. So this is more than 3/4 of in-market buyers are planning to visit a car showroom in the next 3 months, despite the ongoing COVID risks. And this is all based on research carried out by What Car of 1,400 in-market buyers. So of those heading to a retailer, 78% said the Omicron variant has not actually impacted their decision to go into a dealership, with the rest waiting for case numbers to decline before visiting. And also the majority, so that's 3/4 of those who won't visit a showroom in the next 3 months, said they had no plans to visit, and Omicron has not actually impacted their decision, so they weren't going to go anyway. But a quarter, 24%, said they had decided to postpone a showroom visit due to Omicron. So some interesting messages coming out of this one.
Yeah, and I suppose in terms of the latest announcement from the UK government, that I think it's the Thursday coming where particularly for the car showrooms, they don't now have to wear masks in a vehicle showroom environment, and I know some of the auction centres now are looking at whether they need to have masks and shields up at the rostrums there in terms of the auction wholesale environment. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly this will return, because as you say, the report does cite that 72% of buyers would avoid visiting a car showroom if it did not have adequate COVID measures in place. And we know that there is this now easing of relaxation. We know there's been the announcements of outdoor events both in England and in Wales has been one of the recent announcements, hasn't it, from Wales there. So it will be interesting, but I think hopefully this is good news, because we are approaching the sort of final week of January, and I know it's been a slower start for some than others, and there's been that January rush didn't quite happen, but hopefully these restriction lists will, and the fact that customers will go back to visiting showroom will give that sort of pent-up activity that is much needed in the showrooms at the minute.
Yeah, you're right, especially in the run up to March, because of course, we do have the new plate change coming up, and if there is more confidence among buyers in going to showrooms, then that's really welcome news, especially in that run up period to March.
Definitely, if they can get a new car, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, yes. There is always that challenge, isn't there?
Now, there's green shoots there as well. It's not for today's podcast, but it is. I think there is a bit of green shoots there with supply marginally now starting to appear. So hopefully, this March will be a better one than what we experienced last March. Hopefully.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by eBay Motors Group. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand wherever you are on your podcast feed.
So heading over to Motor Trade News, I know we've mentioned this a couple of times recently, and hopefully Neil is listening from Judge Services, Neil Adley. But he's doing some great work there in terms of some of their sort of surveys and satisfaction studies and things like this. So hopefully we can get Neil on soon and do an exclusive interview with Neil on some of the findings. But this is talking about fast stock turn continues to be driven by consumer satisfaction. So this is the link between that consumer satisfaction, looking after the customer, would actually drive through that sort of dealer stock turn, despite the shortage of new and used cars and the impact that we know has occurred from the pandemic. So some great findings here from Judge Services, as always.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I've actually seen the research, and I did help Judge Service pulling some of this data and the release together. So what they've identified is a continued correlation between customer satisfaction and dealer stock turn, and that's, as you say, despite the shortages of both new and used cars and the impact of the pandemic. How do they know this? Well, because they've compared data from last year with data that they first collected in 2018. Now, if you remember back that far, Phil, that was before COVID. That's when life was pretty normal. So the research shows how dealers with Judge Service promoter scores of 90% averaged a stock turn of 27 days. That's 27 days in 2021 compared to 28.5 days in 2018 when the link was first established. While dealers with promoter scores of 50% currently average 34 days to sell a car. So the higher the promoter score, the faster you're selling cars, and that is as true now as it was back in 2018. Probably even more so, bearing in mind those shortages of new and used stock.
Yeah, and I think connected to this as well, and sort of testament to some of the work that Judge Services are doing, and the accolade to some of the dealer network, and a friend of the podcast with Robert Forrester there from Virtue Motors, that on Friday of this week put a tweet out early in the morning that he was delighted to receive a letter and a certificate from Judge Services saying that 96% of their used car customers would recommend the group, and announcing there that retention is key. So it's, as Neil Adley put there, it's great to see a group of that size to secure such a high recommendation score for the customers. So again, hopefully we can get Neil on at some point on the podcast to go through some of his findings and his views on what's happening.
Yeah, definitely. Now, next story is from Motor Trader, and it's an update on a story that you may recall from last week. The headline is Mercedes-Benz Retail Group Technicians Get Improved Pay. Now, last week we reported that there was a strike threat pending from a number of dealers within the Mercedes-Benz Retail Group network, and Unite were involved in discussions with the management team there. But the good news is that the dispute has been settled, So no threat. The threat of strike action has gone away, and there's been a resolution as well, which is really sort of welcome news. But we looked at this story earlier, and there is a bit of confusion within the story. We know that the technicians have had a pay rise, but unfortunately, from this story, Unite is saying one thing, and Mercedes-Benz Retail Group are saying something slightly different. So, we urge you to go over to the story and see for yourselves.
Yeah, we've made an assumption, but again, it's interpretation. But there's Unite saying that it's 13% that the technicians have received, but that accounts for a £500 lump sum for 2021. But then a restructuring that has taken place there. But the bonus scheme is set into the contractual basic pay going forward, and the 3% is a bonus going into 2022. But it is stated there from Mercedes Retail Group that it is a 3% pay increase, not a 13% pay increase. So again, head over to the story. It's there on, as always, we'd always say that anyway with some of these stories, but over to motortrader.com, and the story's there. And I mean, in one way, it was kind of, we talked about it, didn't we, Curtis, that it's the first time we've seen a threat of strike action and the word strike within the automotive sector. But it seems to have been resolved really quickly, I suppose, and whether that was, obviously the threat of strike probably did that, didn't it?
Well, yes, it is welcome news, because when we recorded last week, they were due to have a meeting, so that meeting would have resolved it, and it ended up in this announcement. Yeah. And it's worth just adding that the original offer of 1.5% pay rise, that's the offer that was rejected.
Yeah. And our final story of this week, and it's two stories really. It's two headlines, two different medias, but from the one group. And this is on Stoneacre, and in Motor Trader, it's profits rocket 169%. Yes, you heard it correctly, 169% at Stoneacre to hit a 26.4 million performance there. So this is that Stoneacre have turned in a strong performance for their year ending 25th of April 2021 with a pre-tax profit of 26.4 million compared to a 9.8 million for the last time on a turnover of 972.9 million. So fantastic result for Stoneacre there, and I know they have been quietly doing some acquisitions over recent years, but I mean, great opportunity there for these guys now.
Yeah, no, it's a great result, especially when you dig down into the story, and you see that turnover from its accident repair business actually fell 17% as a result of fewer cars on the roads during the pandemic, and part sales were also down 5%. But they have made improvements in costs, but during the period it actually increased the number of employees. So that was up from 2,800 to over 2,900. So really positive story here. And over the course of that reporting period, which was up to April 2021, the company made a number of acquisitions, including RMB Automotive in June, and two Toyota dealerships bought from Jardine in Durham and Sunderland. So great result there.
Yeah, and I think you've got to remember the size of Stoneacre. I mean, he's now up to 64 sites across England and Wales with 135 franchise sale points, and that's representing 25 manufacturers. So they're a significant player, but the story in AM does have a slightly different headline based on the performance and that increase in profitability, saying that they remain very well positioned for continued expansion throughout the period. So you can see where that I can imagine that the gents at Stoneacre there will be keeping a close eye on opportunities of further growth. And like as you say there, Curtis, the fact that they were buying throughout the pandemic period, and I'm talking as if it's past tense, it's not necessarily past tense, but as you say there, they've increased their staffing levels and recruitment levels, and also been investing in EV training and things like that. So they're obviously looking at further expansion growth.
Yeah, and also it's interesting that continued expansion will be with existing and new manufacturer partners. So I rather suspect that we'll be revisiting Stoneacre over the course of the coming months.
Definitely. So I think that's it for this week. But I think, as I say, I do urge you, as always, to head over to some of those headlines, dig into the stories, and have a look at any headlines that have been announced since we recorded this podcast. But and as Curtis said right at the start, if you've got anything that you want to share on the podcast, any press releases or any exclusive reports that you may have, then drop us a note. We'll gladly do that for you. Or if you want to come on the podcast yourself, then again, it's there, and please take up that offer with Curtis and I.
That's all for this week. You've been listening to the weekly Motor Trade Radio podcast brought to you by eBay Motors Group. Many thanks for joining us for all the chatter that matters. We're back again next week. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.